Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
All good, thank you.
Very good. I heard I missed a fantastic lunch session today, but I'm really excited to be here with this panel today. The area of content has always been one of the focus areas for our teams, and understanding the challenges and the vision for how we do it. I know we're going to have a very good session. It is not always easy to put together a compelling content portfolio, and we have very different approaches to how we do it. So I'm hoping that we can shed some light on these areas, and we're going to start out with a challenge. So we were talking before about the impact of fragmentation. So Anurag, what is fragmentation the way you see it? Why is it a challenge? Please enlighten us.
So I think we all acknowledge that it's the golden era of television content. You know, it's peak TV in some ways, but there's also the problems of plenty we are beginning to see. You know, I could rattle off names of about 12 different services that consumers in Singapore could legitimately subscribe to, and they would want to, but the fact is that our consumers, when we look at them, hardly ever go beyond 2.5 services on an average, right? So that leaves a gap of maybe 70-80% of the high quality content which is out there not being subscribed to by the consumers. So that's just the beginning of the problem. And then you have, so you as a consumer, you're managing different subscriptions. As content providers, you're grappling with content discovery. You're grappling with the issues of customer activation. You've got 5 different apps. How do you get consumers to open those every night? So these are issues that we are increasingly seeing. But also interestingly, and there's some statistics we were seeing and slightly disconcerting. We feel that it may be actually leading to some boost in piracy numbers. Because once you have 12, 14, 15 different services, and you're not really subscribed to all of them, but you do know these shows which are on other services you're not subscribed to, consumers in a market like Singapore, highly connected, good access to broadband, what do? You Google other sources for the same shows. So actually, after being on the decline for many years, peer-to-peer piracy is now actually going back up again. And so there are some very apparent problems in selling multiple services to consumers, managing multiple subscriptions, activating services, and so on. And then there are these kind of hidden problems which this fragmentation seems to be causing as well.
All right. I'm going to jump over to you, Paras, because to build on that, you said that one level of permission, so when we access our favorite platforms, we are given a permissions level, and you're saying that we need to rethink how we authorize users for different levels of permissions. Can you walk us through that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So if I take a step back and look from a content creator or content provider point of view, and as Anurag mentioned and you highlighted about the fragmentation of audience, I would look at differently. I would say that the people are now increasingly consuming content across different platforms. And some of that platform fragmentation is that where people are not necessarily moving between platforms. So they may be consuming few, and that pretty much may be satisfying their need for content. So as a content company, the way that we look at it, we first look at how people are consuming content, and then we create content across those platform, devices, genres, and formats. But that is just the beginning. To partners like Singtel, in case of Anurag over here, I'll give you an example of Indonesia as a market, which is I would say, probably the most diverse market in terms of content. Over there, we create a content solution, a product solution, and platform solution using the content. So what is content solution? So we have a pay TV business. So we have a linear channel offering, let's say for kids genre as a Nick. We have a free-to-air block of a content of a different nature on a free-to-air channel. Then we have a linear channel as a content with Telkomsel as a part of their OTT service. So that's a content solution for 3 different kind of ways for people to access content. Then the product solution. For Telkomsel, we know that kids, not only for Telkomsel, kids want to not only consume content, but they want to enjoy, they want to play. So not only the Nick content, but we have a Nick Play OTT product. So that's a product solution for them. Now, in the same market, this we all talking about subscription-driven primarily. There are advertisers who want to engage with kids, and they want to engage with kids on a digital platform. So we have a short-form, localized YouTube channel in that market. Each one of that is not cannibalizing the other, but looking at that there are people who are consuming content of different nature across different platforms, how you therefore create customized solutions for each one of them.
All right, so content that's more interactive. So from perspective of Facebook, we also talked about this. Can you share with us what makes content more interactive in your mind? And then as well, we'll talk about some of the other differences between the approach that you have as well as platforms. So,
I think so. There's like a spectrum of consumption, and Anurag and Paras talked about. We are at like one end of the spectrum, which is completely like ad supported and free for consumers, and that's our play, which is Watch. So Watch is a platform which is inside of Facebook, but dedicated surface for watching videos. And it's been like a year. We launched in APAC, and just for numbers context, I mean, we see like about only in a year's time, it's like 720 million people are coming to watch every month, and out of that 140 million coming every day. And we see like time spent of about 26 minutes per day, those 140 million coming in. So, I mean, when we think of content for Watch specifically, I think Watch is a surface which was kind of built on the premise that video consumption need not be just a passive experience or just like experience which is you're watching one way. It's completely a platform or a surface which enables interactivity and immersive experiences, and there are things where you kind of connect with your friends and family while watching videos. So it's a very kind of different experience and a different model which we are working on Watch. And I mean, it's been a year for us to launch it, and we've been working with content partners. This one sitting here, where we are trying to kind of enable the whole ecosystem to be able to create content and not have like guardrails or have scalable means of content consumption on the platform, and where actually there can be like sustainable revenue earnings for partners, and we can develop the ecosystem. So I think the play is a little different from what Anurag spoke about, but we are pretty interesting on. It's pretty interesting times where how we are seeing Watch grow in Asia.
okay. So if we're seeing growth in how audiences consume content, and we're seeing growth in the ways in which we approach content creation, Anurag, you and I have had conversations about the challenges of keeping an entire content portfolio relevant and growing our business to keep it profitable. How has that changed over the last year, and what are the things that you think are working?
Sure. I think the fundamentals don't shift. People appreciate good content, and they will come to any service which has that. It has to be discoverable, it has to be well promoted, and all the rest of it, which is not something that I would have not said maybe 3 years back. I mean, that never changes. Clearly, there are challenges for traditional players where we are having to adapt our business model as well as our presentation layer to the consumer. So whether it's in terms of getting more choice aggregated in one place, and that's clearly the path we are taking at Singtel, where we saw this trend towards higher fragmentation 5 years back, and we started working on essentially a video store where we could start aggregating some of our partners' content. And along that journey of bringing that ecosystem together, there have been learnings for us, and I think that evolution is only just beginning. Clearly, when we first started, we said, okay, we're gonna maybe just manage the subscriptions in one place, but the content consumption can happen in different apps, in different environments. As we've grown that platform, and that's Cast, by the way, that's what we call it. As Cast has grown, it's become more evident to us that that's not how consumers are going to continue to consume content if we are going to serve up beyond 3, 4, 5 different services. So now the emphasis is in terms of bringing it all together in one place so that you're not jumping across different apps. Some successes in that already we are seeing across the region. There are, so Telkomsel, for example, which is part of the Singtel family, has MaxStream, which is a platform which is quite interesting. If you look at Australia, again, Foxtel recently came up with a new box, IQ4, and again, you see the same elements of different content all in one environment. So it could be an app, it could be a box, so it could be TV as an app, or it could take whatever form, but our belief is that it has to collapse together in one place with a single source for all the subscriptions. Now we can package it in very many creative ways, and telcos have been doing that for many years. But ultimately, that consumption has to be easy, content has to be easily discoverable, and the whole has to kind of come together in one place rather than go across different apps. So we are already beginning to work with some of our first generation partners of Cast to see how we bring the integration, make it better. So now if you look at it in kind of more fundamental terms, what I just described to you is pay television. That's how it was. We had a number of different channels, and we were packaging them together into different packages to the consumer, gold, silver, platinum, whatever. And I sense that's what is going on with OTT content again.
I would agree. Now that we are many years past the integration of digital into the strategies that we bring to market, it opens up new partnership opportunities. So we're opening the ideas of how we work together, whether it be across the region, with content owners, with social platforms. So there are partnerships that are occurring that maybe years ago we would not have considered. But I think the way that Facebook is working together, Saurabh, you can tell us, how do you work with partners, and is it a little bit easier than it would have been a few years ago? Or how's the dynamic of working with multiple partners in multiple ways?
Yeah, look, the thing is that Asia is a very important market for Facebook. And we are seeing massive consumption of videos and growth in videos. And some of the countries in Asia are actually some of the top countries for video consumption for Facebook here. We've been trying to kickstart the ecosystem here, but working with partners on various models. So for example, in Thailand, we have deals with WorkPoint and BC, Woody, in Australia with 710. In Vietnam, a couple of partners, Multimedia, Daviet, so some of the top broadcasters. And we'll speak to one more here later. But the thing is that we want to kickstart the ecosystem by working with partners closely to be able to create content which kind of resonates with the users. And so to think of, Facebook is a social platform, and we want to give our users kind of the social experience. And so, when things are happening around a person, so cultural moments and things which are kind of topical in nature, that's when the most interesting conversations happen. And videos can be like a great unifying medium to have those conversations. And so we kind of, our partnerships pivot around things like, okay, if there's a TV show, then can we bring the highlights of those TV shows because people are talking about it? Or if there's a creator who's creating amazing content which is topical, can we kickstart that ecosystem? There are various tools available on the platform, like, okay, can you go live? Can you form groups and kind of interact with your friends and family on those groups? But those groups are actually some show groups which are talking about the show. So I think some of those social experiences kind of married with video. We are working with partners across, and I named a few partners, but there are kind of lots in the pipeline. And the other thing is that we also have fantastic model on just revenue sharing, which we've kind of now opened up to 40 countries in the world, and any partner can create amazing content and upload it and run ad breaks and earn industry standard revenue share, and it's kind of self-serving. So we want to just kickstart the whole ecosystem and give creative juices its own space to flow on the platform.
Okay. It brings up a very interesting and very important topic. I'll put this one to you, Paras. great regional setup, amazing global audience and scale and partnerships. Relevancy. You mentioned telecom cell, which you're working with and you're creating content, and I know your product in India is like hyper-focused on youth and certain demographics. Talk to us about relevancy. What is your perspective, and then what is your Viacom strategy on remaining relevant to an emergent audience?
So I think the way that we look at the relevancy is in, again, two different ways. One is the content and brand relevancy, and second is the business model and partnership model relevancy, because they both go hand in hand but require different approaches. So at Viacom, our brands, luckily, are super hyper-focused for certain target groups and certain demographics. So therefore, by virtue of those brands, it gives us an opportunity to be very zero-focused or laser-focused on the specific target group, and therefore creating content which is suited for them. But equally important of relevancy is that, which I firmly believe in, is that while content is king, platforms are kingmakers. You may have a great content, but you also need to have that relevant content for the specific platform. If we do want to reach out to Gen Z audience, then definitely there are certain platforms which are equally important in a different shape and form of a content for the brand to be relevant. That particular content piece may not be giving you directly monetizable revenue to begin with, but super critical to be relevant. Creating experiential content and events for some of our brands is extremely critical to be relevant, which are investments to get the brand continue to be relevant. Then the second important thing and extremely critical is relevancy with regards to partnership and business models. We firmly believe at Viacom that we build our business by helping our partners build theirs, and which therefore pretty much means that while we all talk about OTT and digital streaming, supremely critical, but at the same point of time, our traditional partners have invested a huge amount of infrastructure, customer relationships that they've built over the years, and they serve the customers with the most curated bouquet of channels. How can we work with them in the most relevant business model, which is now required, specifically with regards to rights, like what Anurag earlier alluded to? If you look at the consumption behavior, we all know that has changed. We all pretty much know it's from completely linear to linear plus on demand, from traditional transmission into TV households, into digital streaming. Then we as content providers also need to evolve that our traditional way of offering content to platforms need to change. The way we used to look at bundling rights or segregating rights need to change. We need to ensure that our traditional platforms get as much access or more for them to continue to build their core business and pivot towards a new digital. At the same point of time, we also cognizant that there are other monetization opportunities available, which are, and both for reaching consumers as well as monetization for us, which is by the platform like Facebook, how therefore we can work with them to create content which doesn't cannibalize the other part of the business but continue to grow. So that's therefore the relevancy both on content as well as the way that we work.
I think, just to add there, one piece of stat is that almost 30% of users who discover a new TV show have been proved to having watched a video first on mobile and then discovered that TV show. So, I mean, that's where Paras's point is, that there's an ecosystem where we can, work together. I mean, the thing is that we work with partners across Asia and across the globe where it's like Facebook brings in much more deeper relationship and connect with the user for that IP or that show. And the show can be on TV or their .coms or OTT platforms for TV networks. But there's like a whole community which can be built on Facebook, and through highlights and clips and even like shoulder content, which gives you much beyond just a TV clip or the TV show. You can build like that those affinities. So I think that's where I think the whole relationship on the ecosystem comes, and we can exist without cannibalizing each other.
All right.
If I may, I'll just pick up on something that Paras mentioned, and I think very, very relevant, which is that traditional platforms that distribute content have been seen as kind of steady revenue by a lot of content providers. And there's been this desire to add more revenue streams, and which is absolutely the right thing to do. But I think somewhere a lot of content providers have lost sight of exactly what they've been doing with the traditional distribution platforms, and which is they actually extract a very high ARPU for their content from, ultimately it's them extracting that high ARPU. We are kind of that conduit for it, but it is their ARPU, and it's very, very high. And what's been going on is that when you start taking bits of those content rights and hive them off into, say, SWOD, and I'm going to do this as a TWOD or an AWOD, that looks like nice kind of top-ups to that big chunk of revenue. But it's taken much of the industry a long time to realize that they are actually long-term setting themselves up for failure. Because none of these new distribution platforms, venues are anywhere close to the same kind of ARPU. And we've seen that. I mean, with the same content, when it is distributed through OTT, somehow the expectation the consumer has is that they would be paying a fraction of it. So, and these are public numbers, I can talk about them. Our television ARPU is almost $40 Singapore, give or take. When you look at our typical OTT package prices, they are priced at $4.90. So you're basically talking about
Can you reinforce that? That was $40 versus
$40. So Singapore $40 versus $4.90, right? So it's a factor of 8 between those two numbers. And what people think of as additional revenue is fast becoming the core, and that's a big challenge for everyone. And I think there is a way out that the content industry has to actually grapple with. And
please share.
Well, I think they have to start thinking of ways in which they protect their core revenue, which is traditional pay television, traditional distribution. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that it has to be cable TV or IPTV. It can be, we are beginning to do OTT distribution as well. The point is that there is this consumer who's willing to pay top dollar for your content. By reducing what you give to your pay television or traditional partners in terms of the whole rights suite, you're actually setting yourself up for failure. So my advice, request to everyone that we work with is that you've got to consolidate all your rights. Right? You cannot be saying, I'll give you a linear channel, but you'll just have a catch-up, which is 5 days. Right? You have to come to the table and say, here's a linear channel. It actually works nicely with box sets on your on-demand. I'm going to put in all the seasons of this show, all 5 of them that have already aired in the last 5 years, and then consumers can continue to watch it on linear. They're going to ping pong between linear and on-demand, but both the services are then going to grow. I think that's the right way to approach it, by kind of being we're being short-sighted, I think, in trying to hive away some of the rights and then selling them separately. So I'm glad Paras mentioned that. That's clearly something that riles up a lot of the industry right now.
It's a really good point. We hear a lot about content from the content creation investment. And what you're also talking about is the content as a relationship builder. I have always been, and it looks like at this point always will be, digital from the time that I shifted. So I started in broadcast and went to digital in the 90s to try and create strategies. For your audiences, when you are making decisions in the order of in my hand, on my lap, or in my living room, where do you try and extract the most from a content, not just investment, from the content being effective for your business? All right, what's the wheel look like? Is it 80% TV, 20%, 10%? Where's the relationship starting for you guys?
So I'm going to pick on something Saurabh said earlier as well, which is that a lot of the experience starts mobile, but it shifts to TV. So a lot of our OTT services are first subscribed through mobile, but bulk of the consumption then shifts to TV. So we've got apps on smart TVs, we've got app on the tvOS, and so on. So there are different ways you can actually AirPlay or cast to your screen as well. And what we find is that your initial engagement, initial subscription might come through the mobile, but it does shift to TV. So we like not to think of it as two distinct kind of streams of revenue. We see it as kind of journeys which include all. which is laptops. Clearly, there's a specific demographic that gravitates towards that much more, and not to the larger screen. The older demographics, clearly, they might subscribe to something on mobile, but they're not consuming as much on mobile. They very quickly come into TV. In the evening, they are switching it on, and it's lean back. So I think it's a continuous spectrum. I wouldn't split it out.
I know that you have invested time in understanding these audiences. A different perspective, Saurabh.
Look, I'm only handheld, really, so I can't comment much on that. But I like to Anurag's point. I think the thing is to think about, and his earlier point too, is to think is how do we create that whole ecosystem where there's a win-win for big screen as well as small screen, because there is a very strong relationship going on, whether it be second screen or whether it be interacting on that, or interacting with your friends and family based on that content, and I think that we cannot kind of underestimate. The other thing is also just finding newer audiences for content, right? To Anurag's point, traditional media, there is high ARPU, etc. But how do you grow your audiences and find newer audiences and newer affinities to that content? And there could be very smart ways of doing windowing and also creating the win-win situation. I think that's where the key is, and then that opens up additional revenue streams for content creators, where actually platforms like us are taking our role in monetization very seriously as to how can we reward content creators for not only the effort or the cost of content, but also the creative aspect of content, which is super important, and we take it very seriously. And over the last several years, and especially last year, we've been launching products which kind of help in monetization. And like I said, right now ad breaks is open in 40 countries and kind of picking up. And so there are various models we are trying to kind of work to where we can reward content partners, and obviously one of the things is we are doing something with Viacom, which Paras can kind of talk to, but it's pretty interesting. I'm super excited on our partnership there.
You've got a few minutes before we go to the announcement. Let's hold back on that for a few minutes. Paras, you guys have always kind of been innovative in how you approach your audiences. So for you, is it in mobile first? Is it in balance? Do you see this changing the way you look at your content?
See, it's interesting because the way that we look at it from a content creation point of view and then content distribution. So if you look at creation, we pretty much know and have realized over the last few years that the nature of sensibility skill sets which are required to create content of certain formats and genres which will later on be consumed on certain devices which are mobile or through social media platforms or apps requires a different skill set. So we therefore have, over a period of time, created different skill sets within the organization to create content for, let's say, big screen, which means the more long-form traditional content. At the same point of time, different teams to create content for short-form content, mid-form content for certain devices and platforms. So that's on the creation side. On the distribution side, to Anurag's and Facebook's point, Saurabh's point, Mr. Facebook, what we look at is that if on the big screen, the consumer can get the full box set, the seasons, the entire thing, then on the small screen or a different ecosystem, that how can you give them something more, which is short form, mid form. So again, that's a different content distribution for each of the two, big screen or small screen, let's call it that way, and a different creation sensibilities for big screen content and short screen content. And then they both coexist.
So big screen content is my iPhone 11X, right?
Yeah, for your hands, definitely it'll be big screen, but not for me.
All right. It wouldn't be right to have a content conversation with 3 global leaders. If you're not familiar, you have to realize that Singtel as a group is the second largest communications company in the world, right? So we've got Facebook and Viacom and Singtel. You can't talk about content and not talk about engagement. I know it's important in your playbook. What does engagement mean? Tell us about it. And how is it part of Facebook's strategy, Saurabh?
Engagement?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we are essentially a social network, and our DNA is being social. And so video is, one form of asset inside of the platform. And we feel like video and especially entertainment content can be great unifier to bring friends and family together. And that's where the role of kind of engagement comes on the platform, is that videos can be very, I think, passive. And then it kind of brings in the whole debate of, well-being and health, and how are you interacting with your friends, family, and how social you are. And I think that's the role we take it very seriously, and we think about always. And that's why the products we build on videos are always have very nice interactive elements where people actually can come together. So one example is creating a watch party. So you don't have to watch a video alone. You could create an experience by starting a party with your friends, and you're actually at different locations but watching it together. And I think that's where the engagement piece comes, is that we really focus on how can we bring meaningful interaction and I would say meaningful social interactions while watching videos. And yeah, I mean that's I think the differentiator, I would say, when we think of videos.
Okay, we had Riot Games talking about this earlier as well, the Twittification of content to really bring in the audience, vitriolic sports fans included. Paras, engagement, I mean, from a content perspective, you guys must be thinking about what's going to grab your audience.
Yeah. So engagement for us, obviously, is not a platform. We have a platform when we have the OTT products. Over there, content presentation is done in a manner. I was earlier giving an example of Nick Play, which is an OTT product. If you look at any platform which is, I would say, distributing content, the way that we look at it, it's when the kids are consuming content, they want to play, they want to get amused, they want to get surprised, and they want to discover content. So our engagement comes in the product solution that's created with this app, where if you go on Nick Play and there's a button called Do Not Touch, we know that all kids will touch that button. So when they touch it, something surprise which will come in. There are games that they'll play, and then they'll watch the long form shows and the short form content which they're here for. So for us, being a platform and a content creator, the engagement is how you are consuming the content. In the other cases where we are distribute our content to platforms like Singtel or to Facebook, that's when we obviously rely on the platform's inherent abilities to engage. But creation of content which is relevant for the audience is what is the DNA for building engagement.
Excellent. I want to give you a chance before we move to the next phase. What's in your roadmap that you want to talk to us about? The things that are driving your passion right now? You guys have a lot of amazing products. Is there any single one we should be looking for?
So I talked a little bit about deepening the engagement with our partners in the cast environment. So that's something definitely on our product roadmap and in our relationship roadmap with all our content providing partners. I think the other thing, and this is a challenge all of us face in different ways, and that's a huge area of focus for us, is piracy. And I mentioned this earlier, we have such a boom in the amount and quality of content that comes with the problem of piracy as well. And so we were just looking at some statistics recently, and globally, video is about 58% of all internet traffic. An estimated 25% of all traffic involves an IP theft. So it's a huge number. And what's going on, especially in places like Singapore, is with good connectivity, it's become much easier. So you're not really looking to pirate. So it's not, you're not looking for a BitTorrent, and you're not setting up a client with then looking for a torrent and then downloading it and then consuming it. It's all been crunched into a box that you connect to your TV, which has a remote, pretty nice UX, nice interface. You can just point to the movie you want to watch, press play, and that's actually become the biggest issue for all of legitimate content industry. So that's something that we've been working on, and what we've, it's a bit of a frustrating thing because I think as distributors of this content, we are at the coal face of it, and so we've kind of felt the heat first, and we've gone and acted on it. There's legal action, there's lobbying efforts and all that, which we've been doing. We've unfortunately seen much of the content industry not quite put their shoulder to the wagon on this one, and I think that's really has to be the first and foremost objective. Everyone has to put on their plans, fight piracy.
Okay.
If you don't do that, all your investments are going to waste.
Because people should know, in Singapore, we've passed some very good legislations to streamline the ability to combat IP theft in that form.
Yep.
And AVIA, locally, you guys have done some amazing work. If you're interested, they're actually a really nice group. They'll be here in a few weeks. And as content owners and creators, we really should support this effort and to start to make people aware that there's great live, that there's great content creation, that the people are looking, and you can just look at a regional distribution of the rights that we hold. So we're really trying to make multi-platform happen better. The content experiences that you all deliver are quite amazing, especially working with sports, looking at kids, looking at the social engagement, and really understanding the fabric. And if we bring all you three guys together a little bit closer, I think we'd have a much more fun content experience. So I'm going to turn it over to the team to discuss sort of a partnership, because Saurabh, you talked about partnerships being important, and Paras, you talked about partnerships being important, and Anurag, you talked about partnerships being important. So why don't we dovetail this session with a small announcement about how you are working together, Viacom and Facebook.
It's perfect. We are super excited to actually announce a partnership with Viacom today. Is that we have a unique program which is called Match, and basically we saw on the platform that there were a lot of creators and people connect with people on the platform, and so creators have a great community. But the challenge is that creators kind of need support of publishers to create great content and more like episodic and long form, a little bit long form content. And there's a whole ecosystem where publishers like Viacom have a big community, and then creators have great community, and oftentimes they work together. So we thought, why don't we bring both the parties together? So we are actually announcing today, obviously Viacom is one of our key partners, but there are also partners from the region, Nas Daily, 7 in Australia. By the way, Nas Daily's moved to Singapore, and like Woody in Bangkok, and partners in Vietnam, like True, etc., where we are coming together to create content specifically for Facebook, where we are matching publishers and creators. So I would want to probably Paras to say what the content looks like. I'm super excited about it.
I'm super excited, obviously. So this particular program, as I think Saurabh already mentioned about the Facebook Watch, and when we started discussing, it's basically using the skill sets and the storytelling of MTV, and using the creativity and the IPs and ideas that MTV brand has, which connects very well with Gen Z audience and millennials, the younger side of that. What we are therefore creating as a part of this partnership are 8 short-form series, 4 of which will get launched in this calendar year. Each of these 4 series are built on new creative IP and idea, working very closely with the Facebook team, who therefore, on the back of their analysis of what the audience on the platform is requiring, and based on our understanding of what the Gen Z audience requires, matching with the influencers from Southeast Asia across different regions. And that, therefore, the fruit is coming out, or will come out, in shape of 4 creative ideas for this year. When I say creative ideas, 4 different series. They are in no particular order of priority. One is Generation Change, which, as the name suggests, are the influencers who have made a big difference in Southeast Asia in different ways and manner. The second is Ink Positive, which is the pun on Think Positive, but with ink, as their name suggests, is based on tattoos, but tattoos which are not as an ornamental thing, but which have some story behind them. And the third one is 5 in 5, which basically is a more lighter take on some of the key influencers and celebrities from the region. And they discuss about the 5 things, or do different 5 things. And the fourth one is The Ride. The Ride is based on a very popular MTV IP, which is built on chronicling the journey of the key music stars from Southeast Asia as the ride that they have had. So team is super excited. Work has already begun. Look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Saurabh, Paras, Anurag, it's been a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'm very excited with these news, and I'm certain there'll be a lot this year. Can we please thank our panel for sharing?